Hey everybody, so my name is Pretty and I am the Dominican Voodoo Spiritualist. And today I'm going to be talking about how people believe that anything that is spiritual, whether it's readings, ceremonies, candles, or anything spiritual, is supposed to be free and that you don't have to pay. So this video will be like a mix of an informational video and a rant. So if you're here for rants, then stay. If not, you might want to leave. But if you love me, you love my videos, I know you're going to stay either way. So here we go. Now, so, you guys know that I have been in spirituality for 5 years. I am a pandemic spiritualist. Well, I'm not going to say I am a pandemic spiritualist because I started tapping into spirituality in 2019, and this is like way before the pandemic. Because I remember I was working in like a doctor's office and I got tired of going through stuff in my life. So I was like, let me tap into spirit. And that's when I started getting into like tarot cards and candles and so on and so forth. So that's what I did. Now, moving along from that, when I was in spirituality, it seems like my generation or my group of spiritualists that came up when I did, we didn't have no issues with paying people money. We didn't have any issues with charging people for our services. We didn't have any issues with understanding that if you want somebody to do something for you, whether it be a reading, a ritual, a ceremony, you have to pay for it. And then as time went on, I want to say around like 2021, 22-ish, that's when people started acting broke and feeling as though, oh, well, spirituality should be free. Our ancestors wasn't paying $12,000 for ceremonies, or we should do like the barter system where instead of you paying me money, you could pay me in a reading and I'll do a reading for you so we could do like an energy exchange. And then you have the discount people, where people for some reason are so allergic to anything that costs above $30 or above $20. And I gotta sneeze. Okay, the feeling went away. You got people that are, then you had people that were allergic to anything that was more than $20. But as soon as you had like a discount sale where all of your readings were $5 or all of your readings were 10, or you had some type of ritual sale on something that was $15 when it used to be 50, that's when you would get a large influx of people coming in. But as soon as you charge $55, $40, $100, you get only one or two customers. And then you had like the toxic era where you had all these like hood ratchet people doing readings and spells and all this type of stuff, and then just gossiping and throwing at people and talking about people and all that kind of stuff. And this is why like a lot of spiritual groups, especially on Facebook, have either been shut down or they became Bible study groups or Proverbs 31 groups because the toxicity and the wickedness and nastiness just became so bad. But some of us survived. I survived because I'm still here. But it's like I'm just not understanding it. Like it wasn't as bad back then as it is now, where people always wanting stuff for free and with people always thinking that anything spiritual is supposed to be free. Because from seeing this stuff and going through it myself as a spiritualist, I'm like, now I understand how church people feel. Now, a lot of people do say, the church is a scam, it's a gimmick, it's nothing but a giant religious ATM machine. And depending on what church it is, it can be one. But at the end of the day, you have to understand that when people are giving you a service, they're exchanging their energy for you. Like pastors, pianists, drummers, singers, people that operate the lights and the screens and things of that nature, they're using themselves. They're burning energy just to make sure you have a good service. So of course they want to be paid. And then on top of that, the facility that it's being held in has to be paid for. And in my opinion, that's what tithes and offers should be going towards. But when you give money to people that you don't know what's doing with the money all the time, it may not go where it's supposed to go. But that's besides the point. But when it comes to spiritualists and tarot card readers, practitioners, priests and priestesses, they're giving you a service that's using their energy. Readings require energy. Rituals require energy. Ceremonies require energy. Opening up stores and operating stores and spiritual shops and botanicas require energy. Doing head washes require energy. Anything that's spiritual, it requires energy. So I'm not gonna sit here and let you ask me a million and one questions, draining my energy to the point where my head hurts, to the point where I'm so sleepy that I immediately knock out once I'm done talking to you, or you just trauma dump on me so bad that I gotta take a spiritual cleanse, a spiritual bath, and burn a candle and probably burn some sage to get your funky energy off of me. And I'm not going to do all of that for free. And some of y'all feel obligated and feel vindicated and even try to even like validate the fact that it's okay to treat people like that. It's not. And then, once I get done talking about this tip, then I'm going to go inside of the ATRs because that's my spiritual lane too, and I'm going to deal with that. But a lot of y'all have some nerve thinking that you can approach people sick and sad or with all these trauma problems and stuff and want to sit and then think that just because we're a voodoo practitioner, hoodoo practitioner, or Ifa practitioner, Apollo practitioner, or whatever practice we practice, that we're supposed to be so compassionate and understanding that we let you dump on us for free. It's not fair and it's not right and it's really rude and inconsiderate for you to do things that way. Because going to a spiritualist is like going to a counselor, going to a therapist. Because if that wasn't the case, then when I'm sitting in therapy sessions, hey Serena, that when I'm sitting in therapy sessions, I'm able to discern what my therapist is saying versus what I think and believe and what she's saying and how it coincides with what I tell my clients. So we may not I'm not even gonna dumb down spiritualists because a lot of us in the spiritual community are highly educated. You have people who have PhDs, bachelor's degrees, they have associate's degrees, certificates, high school diplomas. Like a lot of us are educated, and some of us are not as educated. But whether we have a lot of education or not, that doesn't make us, oblivious to common sense as to how we should be treated by people. So that's how I feel about that. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to the ATR, situation, ATR topic. So ATRs are pretty much African traditional religions. And the religions that I'm aware of and that I have knowledge of that fit under that umbrella would be Haitian Voodoo, the 21 divisions, or Dominican Voodoo, Santeria, Isheshe, Palamayombe, and Candomblé. Those are the ones that I know. If you guys know any others, feel free to mention those. Oh, um, Sanse, which is Puerto Rican voodoo, that would fit under that umbrella too. So those are the main ones that I'm aware of and that I've dabbled in and whatnot that fit underneath that ATR umbrella. So with the ATRs, African traditional religions, on TikTok especially, there is so much trash that is being preached, so much trash that is being taught, and there is so much division to the point where it's really sad and ridiculous. You got people in Ifa arguing, in the Palamayombe streets arguing. Haitian voodoo, it's been a hot tail mess with Haitian voodoo. And in the 21 divisions, I can honestly say we're the main ones that's kind of quiet about what we do and how we believe. But I see a lot of these spiritual wars going on with like the Ifa and the Palo and the Haitian voodoo people. And Haitian voodoo people are kind of a little bit more quieter now too than they used to be. But I'm mainly seeing a lot of like spiritual wars and conflicts and debate conversations with like the Ifa and Apollo people. So the thing is that when you come into an African traditional religion, and these are my opinions. If your opinion differs, okay, that's fine. I believe that when you enter into an African traditional religion, you need to be led by your ancestors or you need to be led by your spirit guides. You don't always have to know who they are, what they are. If you feel led, then be led. The proper channels to go through with African traditional religions, like I did, is to get a reading. It's best to get a reading through a priest or a priestess, or get a reading by somebody that's initiated. If it's in your calling and your path to be initiated, it might be best for you to go through a priest or priestess to get readings done. If you are just curious and want to know stuff, then you can get a reading done by a practitioner of that religion. So that's that. Once you get involved with the readings, you'll start learning how to do rituals. You'll start learning about different spirits, the names, the colors, the foods, the rituals, who you need to go to, what you need to start, whether you need to do an ancestor altar or a boveda or any other type of ancestral veneration, or what spirit you need to go to, so on and so forth. You will learn that in a reading. And then when you start practicing and using your knowledge and using what you learn, that's when your spiritual development starts and grows. So, readings are not always cheap. Readings can differ in prices. And the only thing I'm going to say is to use your common sense when it comes to getting a reading. So, there are a plethora of different types of readings that are done in the African traditional religions. In the Ifa tradition, you have the Obi reading that's done with the coconut shells. Then you have the Eridi Lagoon that's done with the cowrie shells. Then you have the Apuele chain, which is done by a Babalawo, and that's the one that's usually read on like the Ifa board and whatnot, and the Apuele chain. So those are the three main types of readings that are done in the Ifa tradition. So with the OB reading, that could be done by a Santera or a Santera. And a Santera and a Santera are priests and priestesses in the Lukumi Santeria tradition. They could either do the OB reading or they could do the Eridi Lagoon. Now, if a person is an Abarisha and they have learned how to read OB, they can read an OB, they can read OB for a client as well. But when it comes to Irindi Lagoon and Opuele, the Opuele reading can only be done by a Babalawo. That's a high priest in the, that's a high priest in Ifa. And when it comes to the Irindi Lagoon and the OB, the Irindi Lagoon and the OB can be done by a Santera, which is a priest or priestess in the Santeria Lukumi tradition, or they can also be done by an Iyanifa, which is a high priestess in Ifa. So a lot of times those reading prices will range from $20 to like $100. And I've heard of some people charging at least 165, 170, $200. In my opinion, I would not pay $200 for that type of reading. I would not even pay $150 for that type of reading. Why? Because, in my opinion, and to each his own. And by me saying this, I'm not negating the seriousness or trying to downplay the sacredness of those readings. But I don't think a reading should be more than $100. That's just me. Because a lot of these spiritualists and priestesses, they get over on people with these readings. You have some priests that charge as high as $500 to $1,000 for a reading. And in my opinion, that is way too much money to be paying for a reading. And some of these readings that cost this much, as soon as you get them, they're not as long as they say they should be. They're not as detailed as they should be. They don't even tell you everything. And it's almost like, in order for you to learn more information, they want you to book another reading. I'm not saying all priests are like that, but to all priests or priestesses are like that. But in my opinion, you should not be paying more than $100 for a reading. That's just me. Even me with my readings, I charge between $50 to $75 for readings, and then spiritual work is $100 and up. Like, that's me. That's my price. That's just what I charge. Um, and then another thing about spiritual work. Now, when I say spiritual work would have to be when a person does a spell, a ritual, or they have to work with a deity or a loa, a mysterio, or an orisha on your behalf in order for your situation, your problem, or for your blessing to come through. And the price ranges for that can vary. And I know I'm sticking with Santeria, Ifa, Lukumi, because whenever you have, so from experience, when you have the Aaron D. Lagoon reading, sometimes they will tell you, and this is the Aaron D. Lagoon is the one with the cowrie shells. A lot of times you get messages from the Orishas, and they'll tell you if you have to do an ebo, which is like a sacrifice, or if you have to do an adimu, which is like a food offering to an orisha to fix a certain situation. The same thing with the Okwele chain reading done by the Babalawo, and the same thing with the Obi. Now, the OB reading is supposed to be specifically yes or no questions to the Orishas, but a lot of times, a lot of the EIs and the Babas, they will go in deep detail in their OB readings, and they may give you more than yes no responses, and they'll give you recipes and rituals that you could do, and so on and so forth. So that's that. But the price range for air bowl and Ademu, it can range. It can range between 50, 60, 100 to maybe like $200, $300. In my opinion, I feel like those prices are reasonable because sometimes animals have to be sacrificed when an air bowl has to be done. Certain foods have to be cooked and prepared in order for things to be offered. Um, and I don't like saying but that's pretty much the price range. And when you understand how those things work, you'll start to see why they charge the way that they charge. Because in Ifa and in Santeria, and not so much, well, I'm not sure about the Sheshe because I don't practice Sheshe, but with Ifa and Santeria, with the ebos and the ademus, animals sometimes will be sacrificed, and traditional Nigerian foods will be purchased. Yes, Nigerian food can be cheap depending on what it is, but at the same time, depending on what Orisha you have to approach, how many offerings they want, it can kind of get expensive. So that's what you're paying for. Now, going into the voodoo paths and whatnot, now voodoo can be a little bit more expensive. And I know there's different variations of voodoo. You have Haitian voodoo, you have Supwen, and you have Asaway in Haitian voodoo. Then you have the 21 divisions, which is Dominican voodoo, and they have different lineages and paths that are a part of the 21 divisions. Then you have Sanse, which is Puerto Rican voodoo, and then Beninian voodoo, which is African voodoo. Now, with their readings, the reading prices can